Well, good evening. Going to try and describe a little bit of this project building this 35th scale tank. I've kind of reached a milestone because I've converted it to radio control, and today's the first day it's really fully functional. So demonstrate what I've done here a little bit. So this is not a particularly expensive model, maybe 20 bucks, something like that. What I started with, it's this model here. I think it's who makes it? Trumpeter. It's a Trumpeter model. And really, I've only completed the first couple steps. You can see almost none of the parts in the kit have been assembled on the tank. I think I completed maybe the first couple of steps, which were just the wheels. And other than that, there's about 4 major parts: the hull and the deck and the turret base and the turret housing. Those 4 major parts. Other than that, the tank model hasn't really even been started. But it's functional. So describe a little bit of that. Added these metal tracks. I think these are Frumel, I think. The tracks are about twice the price of the tank, but if the tank's going to be functional, the rubber tracks, I didn't think they were true enough to work very well. The metal tracks look a lot better as well. The first problem I encountered is that the tracks that I bought, and I was very careful to buy what Frumel said was correct for this tank, this TI-67 Israeli tank. Should be the same as the Russian T-55. Anyway, the metal tracks, really disappointingly, they just don't fit. You can see that. They don't fit around the sprocket. They're just the wrong pitch. So I tried to make out of credit card material and G10 for the hub, and I just filed it down round, and I used credit card to try and make a sprocket that would fit the metal tracks. And I did pretty good. It almost worked. So you can see it fits pretty well. I did have a little bit of an issue with the track coming off of the sprocket. It might have worked. Would never have looked as good as the original, but then I got a 3D printer, and really the 3D printer was the first major breakthrough in terms of my being able to make some headway with the tank. So I just basically copied the design as best I could. This is not complete. What's on the tank is the finished version, and it's nearly identical to this one, except I think it has one more tooth, and it's a very slightly different size, as close as it could be and still get the pitch right. And anyway, it fits perfectly. It was not easy to get it to fit perfectly, but it fits perfectly. And now I don't have the problem where the track comes off of the sprocket. So that was the first major hurdle, is that I would never have been real satisfied with the tank if I hadn't been able to build this entirely custom 3D printed sprocket. So one thing I learned here is that, there's pretty tiny details on that sprocket with the teeth. They have to be pretty sharp. The contours have to be pretty close. But the 3D printer, I bought the Ender 3S1. It was all in, tax, shipping, everything included. I paid just right at $300 for it. And it's proven to be an essential tool in building at this scale for stuff like this. Another breakthrough with the tank, I didn't really know what electronics to put in it that would give me all the functions I was looking for. And what I discovered, Heng Long and Tamiya both are major manufacturers of 16th scale tanks. Heng Long sells for probably half the price of Tamiya, and they sell a lot more tanks. And they make a controller which you can buy cheaply. So this is the controller, although the guts of the controller is this board. You take the board out of the controller, of course. But what I discovered was that this controller for the 16th scale Heng Long tank, if you take the board out, and of course there are really heavy gauge wires coming off it, and all those have to be removed and smaller appropriate gauge wires put on. But this board will fit into the 35th scale tank. It goes in about, the board goes in right about here, and on top, and actually it's in the tank, it fits in about that way, just about like that. And on top of it is a 6-cell 1000 milliamp hour nickel metal hydride battery. The batteries are this way: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And the battery is just about as big as the board. So it's the board, the battery are there. And then also, I had these Heng Long speakers. This is the speaker for the 16th scale tank. And I had 2 of them. And what I did was, one element is passive. This is a passive element, and the active element was here. But as you can see, I cut out the speaker, the active element in the speaker. When I did that, I lose bass. I don't get the bass or quite the volume I do in the 16th scale tank. But still, it's a speaker. And it's a big speaker probably for this tank. You can see the speaker. Let's see if I can. You're looking at the big old magnet on the speaker. The speaker's actually pointed downward, and you're looking at the back of it. So, and then beyond that, I was working with the little gear motors that you can buy for $5 or $6. You can get them in a lot of different, and I had 2 of those little motors fit to the back of the tank. I guess I ought to show that. A moment. So I had initially started with these little motors, and I had this motor mounted like right, well, here. And they were cool because I could have one on this side and one on the other side and they both fit. They didn't have to be staggered, and they directly drove the tracks. And it worked, but the speed, I could not get very high speed out of it. I didn't realize at the time that you can find these in a very wide range of RPM, from 15 RPM all the way down up to like 1,000 RPM, in pretty fine gradations. What I needed actually was 300 RPM at the wheel, at the sprocket. And I didn't realize I can actually buy that in this size motor. This motor, I remember it as being a little noisy, and also I don't think the speed regulation was as good with this motor as what I'm using now. I don't have the box for it, but this I'm basically just using those little box gear motors that Tamiya sells. They sell like, gosh, they must sell 10 different kinds, and a couple of them are potential candidates to fit the tank, and I forget which one I selected, but anyway, it has worked really well. I get good low-speed operation, and I get a good scale high-speed operation, which for this tank I think is about 30 miles per hour, and that's about what the tank will run all out. I was looking for the motors to show some of the Tamiya motors, but I'm not seeing them right off. So anyway, that's it. That's the big breakthrough, is that, and I wonder if how many people realize that would like to build a 35 scale or RCIs at a 35 scale tank, that you can use the Heng Long electronics. If you use the Heng Long electronics, then you have all the functions. So this has the tail lights that turn on and off, the headlights that turn it on and off. A cannon, it has a flash on the cannon. You can program this to have a flash instead of the BB. So this is programmed for the flash. Of course, I can't fit a BB in this. I certainly can't fit the smoke in this. It's got good turret rotation. It's got turret elevation. And of course, it's got good speed regulation all through. And I guess that's the next thing to show, is just the tank in operation. So, and this is actually like the second time that I've gone through all the functions, because I really just got it working today. So this is the standard Heng Long transmitter. What's nice is that these are inexpensive. Also, this transmitter, when I turn it on and I turn my 16th scale Heng Long Walker Bulldog tank on, this controls the Walker Bulldog. When I turn this on and I turn this 35th scale tank on, this controls the 35th. There's no binding or anything. It just locks right up and works on either one by just as if it's made for it. So I haven't tried I imagine if I turned both of them on, this thing would be sending signals to both of them simultaneously. There's no lockout, but I haven't tried that. Okay, so turning the tank on, and this is basically just the standard way Heng Long works. If you turn the tank on, and I might point out, I went to a lot of lengths with this switch. I wanted that switch to be easy to feel and control, and I finally got there. So the hole is a little oversized, and the switch protrudes just slightly. Kind of followed a Tamiya tank on how to do that. You turn it on, and the first thing to notice is that the headlights flash. Now, something to say about the headlights. There are headlights that come on the sprue. You can build the tank with headlights or without. It's prototypically correct. One of the light actually would be a blackout light and probably wouldn't shine, but I like them both to shine. The lights that came on the sprue would have been the dickens to put an LED in, so I actually 3D printed the lights, the light housings here. Now, ultimately those light housings are going to get painted the color of the tank. Right now they're black because it's, what you need to do is paint them black so that the light doesn't shine out. The light will shine right through the PLA material, especially as thin as it is. And you can see a little bit of that in the back here where I haven't done any painting. The light bleeds through a little bit, so I need to use a little black paint to prevent that light from blinking through. And then when the tank turns on, the lights blink at a different rate when the transmitter turns on. So they're blinking, I think, slow now. When I turn the transmitter on, then they start blinking a little faster. And then when I turn the tank on, then you get sound and the light turns on solid. Well, I turned the tank off. Okay, I'm sorry. When I start it, so I got to press the start button on the transmitter. And then we get the lights on solid. Now, as with all Heng Long tanks, if you press the G and the up, see if I can do this, well, then the light's going to turn off, and so on. And same with the rear lights. Just the way Heng Long works, you pull down. Same with all Heng Long tanks. Now, on this tank, I don't think it had a machine gun in the turret, but I didn't want to try and put a machine gun in the machine gun that they have on top of it. So my tank has a machine gun in the turret. And I notice on the camera it's not as bright as what I see. I have good brightness on all this stuff. Not really seen. Doesn't appear very bright, but it is bright. It's a lot brighter than say I have a 35th scale Tamiya tank that's RC, and one of the faults with that, one of the things I didn't like about it, is that the cannon flash, it goes through a light pipe and it's not very bright, whereas this is nice and bright. So let's see if I can. Nothing I like about, so basically that's all the LEDs. Headlights, taillights, and then it's got the machine gun and the cannon flash. And it's got turret rotation. And the turret rotation is proportional, so you can go pretty slow or fast. And I could probably turn this around 10 times if I had to come back. There's no slip ring in it, but the wires are super tiny and I could turn it a lot of times. And I went to great lengths to try and get a nice service loop in there to allow for that. And you have gun elevation here. I'm missing a spring. It actually lets it come down to about there. The spring's just not in there yet. Also, I'd like the gun to move slower up and down, and basically to do that, instead of using a lever, I'm going to need to do something a little different. I think I've got a way to do it, but I haven't done it yet. So right now, basically, I've got one of these little gear motors, and it's just got a little lever on it. And the back of the cannon, when the gear motor runs this way, it just picks it up, lifts it up, and sets it down. And actually, since it's basically just pushing it down, when I come up, there's nothing to force the gun to go down, but its own weight, and that's not quite enough. So I've got a little spring in there, and basically the spring, I just haven't put the spring back in yet. It popped out, and I didn't put it back in. So the gun doesn't go down as far as it should automatically yet. Okay, so that's gun elevation, turret rotation, headlights, taillights, machine gun, cannon flash, and the only last thing to do is drive it. Oh, one thing to volume, just like all Heng Long takes. So you can go from no volume, a little bit. That's maximum volume. And driving the tank. Hard to see. Okay, let's see if I can. See if I can get a better angle on that. Okay. Need more light. Well, okay. Trying to show the tank does have a suspension. Let's see here. Well, maybe just the easiest way to show it. There is no easy way to show it. does have a suspension. So the only 35th scale tanks that I know of that really are somewhat nicely done and commercially available are the Tamiya tanks, and most of those are not in production, so some of them have become kind of pricey. You can still buy them for about $250 for the kit, but they don't have the suspension, they don't go as fast, they don't have metal cracks, they don't have a working machine gun, they have a light pipe for the cannon, it's not very bright. I don't think the sound is quite as good. They don't have headlights, they don't have tail lights, they don't have volume you can control from the transmitter. It's just like, they're not what I was looking for. But there's all, as far as I know, in terms of easily purchasable, it's really all I am aware of. I know that there are some German-made tanks that, or boards. Clark is supposed to have a board. I'm not sure if you can really buy it. And what I like about this is you can buy these boards just a little bit more than between $20 and $30, shipping and tax included, which makes and also this board, it takes no receiver. The receiver is built into this, so it's the receiver, it's the sounds, it's all the control functions. One board, that's all the electronics. All you need is to wire everything into it. And then even the transmitter, standard Heng Long transmitter, if you've got Heng Long tanks, don't have to buy that again. So that makes this tank arguably about the same price as the Tamiya tanks. Really, the problem is you start, for me at least, I start buying like the little knickknacks, like screws. You can't buy one screw, you can't buy one little spring. You end up deciding whether you're going to pay an arm and a leg for one, or you're going to get a bunch and use 2% of what you have to buy. So you end up spending more money that way. And then tools, I bought some extra tools that I needed to build this tank. I think I spent about $500, of which $300 would be in the tank actually, and the rest is tools and extra parts. Go ahead and shut it down. So I had, when I started this about 6 weeks ago, so 6 weeks ago is when I realized I could use the Heng Long board might fit in the tank, and then 6 weeks later I've got it fit. So what I have left to do is put all the detailed parts on the tank and paint it, and I expect that to be 5% of the work. So it was 6 weeks to get to here, and I had already done the suspension. There's videos that kind of more or less show how to do the suspension. They're a little annoying because they don't disclose the gauge of the wire, and there's details that really need to be explained. And I haven't explained any of those details in this description, just basically that it can be done and how it turned out. So one top level thing is the good tank when you're finished. It's excellent. It's very good. It runs and is about as much fun as the 16 scale Walker Bulldog tank, which I think runs very nicely. And so does this. It runs the same. I also didn't show high speed. High speed, it's a scale 27 miles per hour, which it's 3 times as fast as the Tamiya tank. I guess I really ought to show how fast it is, because was kind of like a big deal. I really wanted to get the full speed range. So, yeah, turn it on again. Start it up. Okay, so we'll back it up. Okay, so as fast as it'll go. Okay, full speed. And everything in between. A couple little knickknacks here. Yeah, we got caught on the tank trap here. All right. So, it's a good tank. And it was a good project. And still is being a good project. It was not easy. I may not have selected the easiest path. The real question I wanted to answer is, could I fit the 16th scale electronics in a 35th scale tank? And the answer is, yep, I can. And other minor questions along the way, could I 3D print headlights and put an LED in them? And that's possible as well. The LEDs were pre-wired LEDs, so I didn't have to wire the LEDs, thank goodness. And I was pushing the limits of what I could do with my 3D printer with a 40 thousandths nozzle to print those headlights, to 3D print the headlights. There are a lot of 3D printed parts. The white, of course, the white sprocket, so that was the first thing I needed to 3D print. The gun is gray. It's gray because that's a 3D printed gun. I decided not to use the kit gun because I'd needed to carve on it, and it was 2 parts, and I didn't think it would be smooth enough, so I just 3D printed the cannon. But as well, there are some major 3D printed parts in the tank. 2 of the largest ones are, okay, I'll show it this way. This I'm calling just a spacer. It holds the turret motor, and it holds the speaker in place, and you can somewhat see it in there. It's gray, and it surrounds the speaker. That's this part. And it spaces the electronics. It holds the board. It pinches the board in an exact position. It spaces the motors. These tabs are going between the motors to space the motors and help hold the motors in alignment. So it holds the switch. So this part, this 3D printed part's doing a lot of work. This part is in the turret right here. This tube here provides the strain relief for the wires as they come through, so that I can turn the turret several times around and the wires just twist around inside that tube. The elevation motor is captured in that square cut out there. The gear motor, well, I can show that. The elevation gear motor goes into that square cutout. It actually goes back about like that. And then there's a lever on this guy. And the rest of the detail is for capturing this round thing right here. There's a detail in, I think, what's called the mantle, this piece right there. And that gets captured by this round part. There's a detail in there that And then on the back, I put a mating detail that captured here, so when you push this down, it's pinched by this. So the whole tank is, there's no tools to disassemble it. I pull up and out, and the turret housing will come off. You turn the turret this way, and the turret housing comes off. If I lift this up, I shake it a little bit, shake it vigorously enough, and this will come off here, and then the whole deck slides off this way. But it's pinched on there sufficiently that I can lift the whole tank up, and it doesn't come off. I have to bounce the tank a little bit to get it to break loose right here. And to reassemble it, it's just basically, it reassembles, the deck reassembles by just setting it in, and I pinch it right there and right there. And it goes together about as well as I could possibly wish it to. It captures, it's a real nice, it's tight. You don't really notice that it's not, glued in. So no tools to disassemble. That was something that I wanted to achieve. Something that I'll probably add right now to charge the tank. Well, it needed to be easy to disassemble because to charge the tank, I need to lift the deck to get the batteries out to charge. I'll add a feature so that I can charge the batteries without having to take them out of the tank. To do that, it's a little more complicated than just running 2 wires off the battery, because you need a way to disconnect the battery from the circuit board. I'm pretty sure that if I don't disconnect the battery from the circuit board and I tried to charge it, that I'd be applying a backward voltage to the circuit board, and I'm pretty sure that could cause damage to the circuit board. So basically the technique is to break the connection on the hot lead to the circuit board, but present a connection to the plus of the battery and the minus of the battery. So in the process of exposing the connection to the battery, you break the connection to the circuit board. And that's the way I've done this in any number of RC models I built, and I'll do that with this tank. It's going to be tight. I'm going to be charging along the bottom of the tank. There'll probably be a couple little connector holes that you'll see, which a connector will shove into. They'll be flush with the bottom of the tank, but basically you'll have to pull a little wire out to break the connection, and then there'll be charge ports. And then I won't have to disassemble the tank at all, and that'll be nice. And that's all I can think to say right off. At some point I'm thinking I may do some videos showing how this tank was built, and a little bit more with, take the tank apart and show how these parts were used to build it. And as I say, the 3D printer has been a really good tool to use for this kind of work. And anyway, that's it. That was the project. So I guess I'll stop recording.